Welcome back, Pirate Crew. It's your captain, Yeehaw Yadam, and we have another exciting week of the One Piece trading card game. So this last weekend, we had two big events that went down. Firstly, we had the Top Cut Online Regional. Congratulations to everyone that made it into Top 16. It was a 490-something man tournament that happened online, and we've got here not a fantastic breakdown of Top 16. This is my pie chart that I created. I know there will be better infographics later on in the future, but I wanted to create this really quickly to show you guys what ended up in Top 16. Again, this is Top 16. We have 7 Whitebeards. Count that once more time, ladies and gentlemen. We've got 7 Whitebeards in Top 16. Whitebeard taking first, second, and third place in this tournament. And I do believe that none of them were playing Moby Dick. This just goes to show Moby Dick is a fantastic card. It gets exceptionally better in OP3, but is not necessary for Newgate's strategy. They have it's a red deck, and they have access to so many great red cards that by removing the current crutch that they had on the Moby Dick and people's focus on the Moby Dick, we've now entered the stage of this Strawbeard, just red good stuff deck that has a 6k base leader, and that deck is frightening. So congratulations to each of those players. We're going to be exploring all of the decks in a second, but I want to just make sure that you guys see 7 Whitebeards took up Top 16, 4 Zoros, 1 Luffy, 1 Flamingo, 1 Kinemon, and 2 Law. So I believe if we count all of the decks that have red in their typing, we've got legitimately 14 decks. 14 of the top 16 had red in its typing, and then we have 1 Flamingo that snuck in and 1 Kinemon. Both very strong decks, but that just goes to show just how powerful the red archetype here is here in just the West. It's absolutely crazy. So without further ado, guys, let's get to some of the decks. All of these decks are being brought to you by Orange Samurai. Thank you so much for being able to have these decks easily available on his Facebook website. But more congratulations to Sheng Zhang, I'm hoping I said that correctly, with his first place Whitebeard deck. So we got his list right here in front of us, and yeah, it's a frightening list. We've got most of the Strawbeard engine with 4 of the Edward Newgate as a top end. And now originally there was a lot of disagreement on the 9-drop Whitebeard in the Whitebeard deck, but it seems like the arguments are now being silenced very quickly. I was once not a proponent of the 9 cost in the Whitebeard deck. I believed if you were the Moby Dick variant, you didn't need the 9 cost, but if we're talking about the Strawbeard version, it's a deck that very easily can maintain board control. Similar to Zoro, if they have the board, they can defend the board, then it's easy to slam a 9 cost, and a 9 cost making your leader at 8k for a turn is basically a turn passer for your opponent. And once you've established 1-2 Whitebeards, the game should just end almost immediately. This deck is kind of frustrating, in all honesty. The fact that Radical Beam and Guard Point exist in the deck, they are searchable by Nami, make it so it's very difficult to finish off the game into a new gate. Oftentimes you're baited into going into them, and they just out combo and kill you on the crackback. And more often than not, they have these really big bodies that don't really do much in terms of Frankie and Monkey D. Luffy, that if your deck doesn't have KO options for them, you're getting a turn of 6-6 or 7-7 very easily, and it's a turn that either is going to take your life away or take your hand. They also have very powerful options like this Portuguese D Ace. Ace is disgusting in this deck. He's crazy. He's a 7k base rusher, which is better than the Luffy just because of his base stat line, easier to defend, as well as the fact that he also gives -3k. He's basically a board clear. Oftentimes his deck has a Nami or like Nico Robin or something on the board that's like really small. It can't contest anything. But once you slam a Ace onto the board, Ace basically says Nami can fight a 5k, which is crazy. Ace can take down all the way up to 10ks. So even like Sideways Mihawks, Emporios, and things like that get eaten up by this card. So honestly, this deck is very scary. I also like the split of Nico Robin and Vista. Nico Robin being searchable by Nami is a better card in the early game, so if they could deploy this early, saving the Vistas for later weenie blockers, is insane. Then they have Newgate. You really can't summon anything with a cost of 3k or less, and if you can slam an Ace, and these are pre-established on the board, the Nico Robin or the Newgate, you're basically KOing a card of 6k or more. It's scary, guys. It's very scary. I am very excited to play the Newgate deck. I am a proponent. I've always been saying that this is a very strong deck, but I wasn't expecting it to be just this strong. It's a very strong deck. Then we got Zoro. I mean, I think we all very aware Zoro is a super strong deck, but I think the deck has to run very clean in order to, you know, round out a 9-round tournament, or you just have to be very exceptional at the deck. a lot of things have to go right for you in the Zoro deck, but more often than not, the number one thing that has to go right is drawing some amount of the Newgate 9 cost card. So the point of the deck is to keep the early game, but if you're able to keep the early game without a late game, what's the point? I mean, sometimes you can win without using the 9 drop, but more often than not, the 9 drop is your main win condition. I do like the fact that Justin here was playing Red Hawk as it's like a pseudo tech for the meta. It's a searchable 4K counter that can out cards like Sunny-kun or small cards like Makinos or Choppers or things of that nature, which I think it's very, very interesting. There's also a Radical Beam in the deck, so there's a 1-1 split. I think this section in general of the deck list is very bizarre. But yeah, very, very cool. Another very powerful card that I want to mention in the Zoro deck is the ability of this Gordon, synergizing with cards like Nico Robin and Vista. It's absolutely crazy. I've been playing a lot of LoL lately, and this Vista is literally terrorizing my gameplay everywhere I go. This card is so annoying. And the 4 jet pistols, you know, the more that you have the jet pistols, the more likely you are to see it in life. And honestly, other than that, this card has seemed absolutely terrible every time I have it in my hand. As if you're playing against a black player, it almost never triggers. You never want to cast this on Zoro. You basically, there's very few targets for this card. Yamato, OP1 Law, and things of that nature. If you can combo it with like Gordon and stuff, then it's kind of cute. But other than that, Pistol has felt very clunky. But I do understand playing 4 just for the higher probability of hitting it in your life. Then we've got the LoL deck. Congratulations to Thomas Win, bro. This is his second. This is his back-to-back top 16. He's played 2 online regionals with this deck, and obviously he's done well both times. Not an easy deck to do well with, and congratulations to him. Very, very crazy player. As we have a pretty solid LoL list, there's very few things that I would change for myself. I have been playing LoL lately a lot, and this list is a fantastic backbone LoL list. Like there's very few things that you'd be like, maybe I'll switch a card here or there, but it comes down to personal preferences. But this deck is insanely good because we have the addition of Curly to Dawn, making our sustainability of finding Nami a little bit higher. The fact that we can find Nami in more of our matches, which increases the consistency of our deck, seeing the Chopper, the Zoro, the Pistol, all the important defensive options is really, really solid. If you look at Nami and what she provides for the LoL deck, Nami adds not the aggression, but it adds like pseudo defense to your hand. Every time you play Nami, you're looking for specifically Choppers, a 2K, a Rusher, or a Pistol. Those are the cards that you're literally searching for, which are cards that can flood the board. The Brook is another very nice option with the Trafalgar Law, as it is a free body in a sense. The fact that you're paying 2 for 2 and then you're able to shamble it is really nice. The Chopper is just another 1-drop red card that can be found by Dawn and is a defensive option. And Pistol is a very solid defensive option. If you look at what Bonnie can find you in the deck, Bonnie's looking for more of your defense and aggression in cards such as the Law Blocker. The Structure Deck Law is insane because you can restand your Zoros, your Laws, your X-Drake, all of these very powerful cards. And sometimes in some scenarios you restand Bonnie. I've been there. It doesn't feel great. And you also have the access because of Curly to Dawn, consistent options to find Otama and Makino. Makino making your Nami a 5K for 1 is really, really good. The only card that you don't get to really search in this deck, everything is searchable, is the Vista and the Curly to Dawn. But you're okay with not being able to search those 2 cards, so by not being able to search them, you max them out, which increases the probability of seeing them in a game. Awesome list, awesome player. And then we've got Monkey D. Luffy. Monkey D. Luffy sliding into this tournament. This is one of the lists. Congratulations to Alan. Yeah, this is like a Zoro list, but playing a couple different cards. So the fact that you're a Monkey D. Luffy leader, you can play the 5-drop Monkey D. Luffy a little bit easier, as your leader ability allows you to get to the threshold of this Luffy, which is like 7 total Dawn for an unblockable Luffy for a cost of 6. He's a 6K base, which is easier to defend as well. And with access to so many fantastic 2Ks in Otama, Makino, and Brook, we have very easy ways to defend it. I also like that this Luffy player was playing 2 of the Red Hawk, respecting the aggressive matchups, maxing out on all of the aggressive top end of the deck, as well as playing a card that people didn't think of. Another 2K that I didn't mention is Mass Deuce. And we'll talk about him later. Mass Deuce is a card that really fell under the radar, and it's interesting to see that this Luffy player was playing him in his deck, alongside very powerful board control options as Nico and searchers like Curly Dawn and Nami. Seems very good to me, but it just seems like a Zoro deck in disguise as well. Then we've got the one of Kinemon, Zaya. Congratulations, my guy. And we've got a very straightforward Kinemon list. I don't think there's any card here that I can argue against. There is a 2-2 split of X-Drake and Trafalgar Law with the 2 and 4 of the top end of a 2-2 split of event spells, which is exactly what you've been seeing, maxing out on all the 3 costs for the Odin. And yeah, that is a Kinemon list. Kinemon again, very powerful deck, being able to reduce the Okiku, the Yamato, and the Raizo, making it easier to get the Odin out to the board for the late game, and Odin kind of just takes the wheel and wins you the game. Paradise Waterfall, I know people are very wishy-washy on this card right now, but I want to mention the fact that Paradise Waterfall is fantastic in the mirror. In the mirror, if you're going first or second, whenever you have a unrested or rested card, your opponent will most likely attack it to proc some sort of interaction from you. And if you well time a Paradise Waterfall to restand your Okiku after your opponent has rested the Okiku, you've basically negated their turn and most of the Dawn they've allocated for that specific turn. So I think Paradise Waterfall, again, very solid in the mirror, makes for some cheeky plays, and then Punk Gibson is an absolutely unbalanced card in life and in hand. Then we'll talk about the 1 of Doflamingo. Congratulations to Ryan. And yeah, this is a Flamingo list. Again, it sounds like I'm saying like these are very straightforward, but that's, you know, a lot of these lists are just playing the absolute best cards they can. There are very little things that you can change, and I will talk about the things that make Ryan's list a little special. First off being the 1-cost Doflamingo. Now I know this 1-cost Doflamingo hasn't seen, you know, it's a little not controversial, but it's another polarizing card that people are either really excited about or not excited about at all. The fact that it is a 1-cost that lets you stack your deck is really solid. It does not have counter power, and it is a 2K, so its stat line is not fantastic when you compare that to that of a Perona, 1 for 2 for 1 that can look at 5, where this looks at less, but it has a Dawn ×1 effect of a when attacking, bottom decking a character, which comes up in aggressive matchups. It's just another Warlord that you can summon off of your Flamingo if you're trying to go and blind with the Flamingo effect, and just increases the Warlord count of the deck in general. It isn't necessarily a bad card, but it's something that, again, it's up to the player's discretion if they want to include that into their deck. Cards like this Flamingo, this Perona are always maxed out in the Flamingo deck. Gecko Moria now finds another partner in this new set of OPO2 that is the first 6K that you can summon off the top of the deck with Flamingo. If you can summon this card off in the early game, it's almost immortal. There's legitimately no way that they get taxed into killing a 6K that early. Then we are playing the Pacifista engine, as it is a very strong engine that, because you can just summon 6K bodies for free, is really, really solid. 4 of the Law, Alvida is a fantastic 2K, and then we've got a split on the Jinbeis. Now, I do believe this Jinbei from the promotional pack is a little bit better because of the fact that it has the 7 Warlords tag, whereas the Jinbei from OPO1 doesn't. But the Jinbei from OPO1 does have the trigger, where this Jinbei doesn't, and it really is, again, another personal preference option. This Jinbei from the promotional pack is also super duper expensive, so there is also that financial option. I know a lot of players aren't able to get their hands on this, as this is like an $80 to $100 card at this time. So I do like this little split. It is very interesting, but I would reckon to say that this Jinbei is just a little bit better. Lastly, we round out the deck with 4 Love Beams for Mihawk, as he is the best top engine that you have to have in your deck. You need to see multiple of these some games in order to win. The only other interesting card is the Brick Fist, as it just came out in OPO2, bouncing a 4 cost to the hand, and which I think will allow you to go for games in situations that your opponent was turtling up behind a couple blockers. This is a card that you rarely see coming, and most often than times you're not playing around this in life, so its trigger effect will catch opponents off guard very, very easily. And here we've had the other big tournament that happened this weekend. So in Singapore, we had another 400 plus player event. This is now OPO3 meta, another infographic that I was able to get. Thank you to Noah Nyan, I hope I said that correctly, for providing this infographic. And we've got here the top 31 leaders. So they decided to do a top 31, and we've got, again, 12 Edward Newgates, 10 Zoro, a bunch of Rob Lucci's, Katakuri, Big Mom, Eustace, Ace, and Kazuki Odin. So ignoring the fact that these are just, strict one-ofs that, it happens in every tournament, a lot of one-ofs can somewhat get there. It's interesting to see that we still have Zoro from set 1. We've got Eustace from set 1 still making waves. Other than that, it's a lot of specific things. Also, the funny one of Odin, respect to my one of Odin. Apparently, the 32nd player was disqualified. God bless. But respect to Odin, Kid, and Zoro. But as you can see, red is still dominating the meta, even in the East. So cards like the Edward Newgate, the Zoro leaders, all of these things are just great investments, as your leader just has fantastic longevity. But my goodness, it's interesting to see that even with the loss of Moby Dick, that Newgate is still just an absolute powerhouse in the East. So getting to the market watch portion of this video, let's talk about a couple quick things, not going to be too long, as we had a very long-winded discussion of all the tournament events that just happened. So Paramount War boxes, they're about 200 bucks, which is fantastic. There was a point in time about maybe 2 weeks ago, these were like 260. So finally seeing the market come down. But again, if this comes down, your alt arts come down. So all the alt arts in this set have like seen a lot of pullback. And again, the most expensive cards have maintained to be around the same cards. So speaking of the most expensive card in the set, we have got the Edward Newgate leader, which is finally consistently under $200. So leader is 178. You can say that it's because of the Moby Dick ban, but the Moby Dick ban has nothing on this man, as he is still topping left, right, and center in all the events that are being taken without using the Moby Dick, whether it be in the East or the West. Basically the most expensive card in the deck. And again, like I said, based off of the tournament results on the Grand Asia Open, Edward Newgate is just a good pickup for a long foreseeable future. Speaking of a long foreseeable future, this Zoro has now finally gone back up. So there was a point in time where this Zoro was under $200, and now it has shot back up to its original price of $250. It is just a very powerful card, a leader that has been fantastic since the beginning of the game, and it continues to be very, very good. Speaking of another card from OP01, we've got Trafalgar Law. Trafalgar Law sitting at about $150, which is usually, it's where he was at his peak. All of these cards in Romance Dawn had a huge pullback when the Paramount Wars set came out. This Law was sitting about 100, and this Zoro was sitting about 175, and now we've seen basically $75 to $50 increases on both of these cards, which is kind of cool. Speaking of a card that's kind of under, this card was 150 at the start of Paramount War. Seeing this card under $100 is very interesting, as he is the #1 blue leader, and for the foreseeable future, I do think that blue, without the exception of Nami, which is a completely separate archetype, if you want an aggressive blue deck, you can't go wrong with Doflamingo, as it has just consistent pressure with its 7 Warlord engine, very strong top end, and just a great mid game whatsoever. Then we're talking about Nami. So these are all the leaders that just wanted a quick mention. Once again, Newgate, long pick. Zoro has been a fantastic pick. Law, again, coming back up. Flamingo going down at this point in time is a great pickup for those of you that enjoy Flamingo. Finally seeing him under $100. And then now going to the character cards, Nami, there was a point in time where she was under $200, about $190, not by much. But now she's shot back up to around $240, $250, as Red just seems to be doing red things. And now this is the card that I want to talk about from the Luffy list, the Mass Deuce. So this is a $9 card right now. And yeah, he is probably the cheapest alt art in Paramount War. And it's not a bad card, but I don't really know why people don't want to play it. I can understand why people do want to play it, and also why they don't. It is a 3K 2-drop that has 2K counter. So its stat line is absolutely fantastic for the Zoro deck. With 1 Dawn on Zoro, this is now a 4K. If you put 2 Dawn to complete its effect, this is a 6K attacker that also just knocks out an opponent's character with 2K power or less. If you mix this up with a Gordon, mix this up with an Otama, then this can start KOing cards of 5K cost or 4K cost, which is pretty darn good. It's very good for almost all the mid game that Zoro and Luffy have to offer, as well as Law. Its main drawback is the fact that it is a Spade Pirate, but other than that, the card kind of does every single thing you want it to do. Let's not forget that in Romance Dawn, there was a period of time where we were playing this card in some list. It is a 2K 3-2, so its stat line is significantly worse than the Mass Deuce. Its typing is about as bad as the Mass Deuce, but its effect is a little bit better, as it is Dawn ×1 instead of Dawn ×2, and it kills knocks out a 3K power or less, which the Mass Deuce knocks out a 2K power or less. I find it interesting that Luffy was playing this card, as you can use Luffy leader to kind of reduce this Dawn ×2 to a Dawn ×1, and for 2 Dawn it becomes a attacking number at 5 that can knock out a weenie blocker. So it's kind of cool. It is a 2K counter. Just wanted to mention that this card was an interesting choice in the Luffy deck. If you want to pick it up for 10 bucks, it doesn't seem like a bad pickup to me. Yamato climbing up to about $30, $40, had a huge spike here recently. It was sitting around the $20 mark for whatever reason. Now it's hit 30 to 40. And yeah, the reason being that the card is really, really good in the Kinemon deck. The Kinemon deck, it wants to just burn your hand by fighting your board consistently. If it can do that, then you have no hand size. They summon a Yamato. Now even, the drawback of that is that when they hit you in life, you will regain your hand. Yamato negates that drawback and really allows them to push for this crazy board control, life control game plan, and it's just very, very punishing. This has also been mirrored in the alt art, being almost the second most expensive card in the set when it's talking about characters, behind Nami. I mean, it's significantly behind, but it is the second most expensive character card, being a huge jump. Not for the alt art, as we saw it go from 75 to 125, which actually has that's a $50 jump. And right here we saw about almost a doubling from 20 to 50 over the course of a couple days. So that's gonna wrap it up, guys. As you can see, Whitebeard is crushing it. Fear the beard, if you will. And yeah, just keep trying to see. I think I'm gonna go ahead and try to make a video on how to play against Whitebeard, because maybe that'll help people understand. But even understanding how to play against the deck, sometimes the deck just produces hands that are very, very difficult to beat. And I'll be deep in the tank trying to think on how to beat this leader. But if you guys like this video, don't forget to leave a like down below. And if you got any comments, questions, or concerns, make sure to leave a comment. We'll talk about anything that you guys have imagined for the competitive side of the One Piece trading card games. And if you guys are enjoying this content and want to consider subscribing, that would be pretty darn nice. And I'll see y'all on the next one. Peace.